Okay, well, I'm Johnny Soporno,
Yeah.
and this is our first time meeting face-to-face. We have been friends through the miracle of internet, both citizens of this same sphere, which you Earth people call Terra. That's true. We have been globalists, except not in the sense that they usually mean that awful term.
We are all one.
Well, that's true. In fact, I don't even know why we're sitting in different places. So we have been friends online and co-collaborators on different conceptual ways to communicate things to people for a very long time, and it's
great to finally.
It really is. It's not nice to know you actually exist. Yeah. All this time, I thought you were black. Anyway, it reminds me. For all the white supremacists out there, my apathy is so overwhelming.
I'm glad we're still talking.
That's right. That's right. So you're dating someone from South Africa now.
Yeah.
So
I think she looks very Asian. She doesn't believe, and no one agrees with me, but perspective.
No, this is it. I mean, I'm a huge advocate of the Bulworth model of reconstruction or racial deconstruction, which he describes as the only way to get rid of racism is to remove races, and the way to do that is through systematic, unrestricted, procreational method. Just keep fucking until we're all one.
Until we'll blend.
I'm hugely in favor of that, except I pretty much insist they be female. It's always, it's not that I'm not open-minded, it's that I've just never been turned on by any guys, and much as I adore you, that's why I got drawn the line. As I often say, there's got to be at least this much woman in between me and the other fella.
This is enough. It's more than enough.
As long as he shaves his testes, same as I do, so I don't end up with that nasty Velcro hook and loop thing when you try and disconnect afterwards.
Keep to be clean and smooth.
That's right.
Really a smooth operator.
That's exactly. It's like the Marquise de Sade's. Anyways, so we're a couple of wacky guys who have always seen very clearly about the importance of being loyal to oneself first, respecting oneself first, and trusting oneself first. And remembering, most of all, that at the end of the day, the only thing that should matter to you is how you feel about yourself. Because in order to win this fabulous game of life, and to be a winner on a consistent and constant basis, all you need is to feel self-satisfied and happy at the same time. And there's a whole world of people out there who are trapped. They suffer from the trappings of success. They worked very hard and built for themselves a lifestyle that was presumed to be enviable, but they're still not happy.
Is that the happiness trap?
Well,
or the successfulness trap?
It's the success trap of presuming that the word success, as most people consider it, is actually a rational use of the word success. See, from
break that down a little bit. Yeah.
A success is one of a succession of successive successes. So each one succeeds the previous one in succession.
So we're talking linear.
That's right. Right. Very straightforward.
Is it closely related to progress? But progress and success?
Well, one could say that. The opposite of progress, of course, being Congress, and we see that particularly here in the United States.
Not regress.
We see a lot of regress too. We're a very regressive society, regrettably, but even.
I'm not even going to talk about hair.
There we go. But you see, people mistake it. People think that the reason I've got this 8 head, I'm rapidly enhancing, is because I have a receding hairline. But it's not. It's a retreating hairline. My hair got one look at my face, and it's in full flight. It's trying to get away. I do have a full head of hair on my shoulders. I'm planning on combing it up one of these days.
Yeah, that'll work.
Just as long as I don't have to look around too much. Anyway, so coming back.
I digress.
It's true. So success has a very, very poorly reassigned meaning. Originally, a success was merely an outcome. The success was the result. You made an attempt, and the attempt yielded success. If the success was undesirable, it was still a success. And then you'd make one successive success after that, if you could, and that would be either a better answer, or a less positive answer, or an equivalently poor answer, and you'd then make the next successive one, each one succeeding the previous one. Eventually, through the process of evolution, we would reach things that were working. Ideally, we would find an optimal success, something that really worked. Sometimes you'd try something and lo and behold, it worked fabulously. And that was a terrific success, a great success, positive success. Sometimes you'd try something and it wouldn't work so well, and all you'd get out of it was the ability to learn from your errors so as not to need to repeat them. Because of course, repeating a mistake, that's nuts.
It's insanity.
See, we start with this faulty problem in our language, and this is persistent across all languages. I don't know when it began precisely, but it's endemic and systemic and must be rooted out. And the problem is, we have assigned to the idea of success a positive or desirable aspect.
Rather than just,
Rather than
and it is what it is.
So, when you start from the process, I would like to try this. Only your brain goes, wait a second, what are the potential outcomes? If it works ideally, it will be a success. You'll feel good about yourself, the world will be good, and people will look at you in a positive light because you were a success. If you make an attempt and it doesn't work out very well, and in fact, it was tragic and misplanned, people will laugh at you and you will look poorly to them and you will be diminished in their eyes. And your ego speaks up to you and says, wait a second, I exist as an avatar that you have generated unintentionally. You didn't mean to have an ego, but as you learned the ability to think about yourself as an abstraction, an entity, as you started to think about yourself, and you had words, that's the layer of the abstraction which exists, suddenly you realized that other people were thinking about you too. And as soon as you started to develop, because when you were an infant, you had no ego.
Up until when?
Up until your parents started to give you a name, an identifier, and attributes. Oh, Zulu, you're such a smart boy, you're a big boy, you're such a good boy. Okay, what do I know? I'm Zulu, and I'm a boy, and I'm smart, I'm big, I'm happy, whatever I'm told. Of course, you start with no such thing as a self-esteem, because to estimate yourself requires that you have some gauge against which to estimate. Right? So you have no idea if you're big or tall, or if you're a good singer or a poor singer. You have no idea whether you're handsome or ugly. You have no idea if you're a freak of nature in a positive or negative way. You have no information at all except what your parents tell you. So you start developing what we usually think of as a self-esteem, but it's not a self-esteem at all. It's a reflection of other people's descriptions to you. So your parents develop for you this ego. And from your parents, you learn two incredibly important lies. And these persist with most people through their entire lives.
Important in which way?
Critical. They are lies that undermine most people's ability to win the game of life.
Okay? And then it's like a program that's running on.
It's a
non-stop.
fundamental paradigm set. And the first one is, happiness is the reward you get for pleasing other people.
So is that a dopamine hit? Or
Sure.
Yeah.
In the simplest way, it works like this. As a young child, you're doing things. Your parents are always happy with you. You're happy all the time because happiness is your natural state.
Joyful. Yeah.
Either you're happy or you're uncomfortable because you haven't been changed, or because the noise is too loud where you are, or there's something else going on. As infants, we have fundamentally three kinds of fears, and only three. We have to be taught everything else we're afraid of. The three are the fear of falling, like the fear of uncontrollably falling, which stays with us. We have a hard time getting past that, but people do. Otherwise, no one would go skydiving. No one would,
Zip lining.
for example. Okay? I've been looking into this new cordless bungee jumping nowadays.
Wires.
Yeah, exactly. Or the taut wire bungee jumping. That's a German thing. Not brave enough to go that way. I think the Japanese have put forward the cordless bungee jumping. This is new wireless technology.
About time.
But if you stop and think about it, the second kind of fear is the fear of loud noises, which we evolved to have because it's a pretty good way to live. Right? Lion roars behind you, you know, get the shit, get the hell out. But if we couldn't get past the fear of loud noises, there would be no disco music, there wouldn't be clubs, we wouldn't be doing most of the things we do.
Movie cinemas.
And then the third type is the fear of pain, which is very helpful.
Falling, loud noises.
Falling, loud noises, and pain.
But
these are fundamentals. These are evolutionarily sound and well established.
These are endogenous fears.
Right.
Yeah.
Now the thing about it is, of course, you get over your fear of pain. Otherwise, you'd never go see a dentist. You know, so many things you wouldn't do. You'd never do exercise. Right. Imagine for a moment the first person who ever willingly jumped out of an airplane with the belief that the bag full of silk on his shoulders were going to keep him from dying. He had to have gotten to a place in his mind where he was not listening to his ego screaming at him like, if you step out of this plane, you're going to die.
Yeah.
Hideously, in terror, this is a terrible idea. That fellow had to be able to get to a point where he was able to communicate with himself and feel completely solid in that, okay, I understand it well enough. I've done all the testing necessary. I've dropped animals and crates of eggs out of airplanes with spinnaker-sized chunks of sail, enough to have pulled a 20-ton ship through the water. I know with this much air being held above me and ropes to me, I'm going to be going no faster than I can land if I jump off a 5-foot thing. I'm going to be okay. And then he had to be able to override his egoic fears. So the first guy, all the praise in the world, recognized the first time anyone steps out of an airplane with a parachute on his back, he's got to overcome all his evolutionary triggers saying, this is a bad idea.
Terrible idea.
However, almost everyone who does it and enjoys it. Okay? Remember this, fellas, ladies too. If at first you don't succeed, skydiving is probably not for you.
Not a good idea.
Now, everyone who does it and it works, by the third time they're doing it, the excitement is not the terror of jumping out. It's the enjoyment of the trip. By the 30th time you're doing it, it's like taking a bus. It's getting in the plane, going up there. You wish it was over already so you could be falling.
Yeah.
So people can get past all of these fears. So as infants, we have these simple fears and nothing else from which to go. Otherwise, we're happy all the time.
And you notice that too. It's not something that isn't obvious. You just look at children.
Yeah, they're having a great time. They're
Having a
happy.
great time.
They're happy. Even when they're crying because they're confused and they don't know what else to do. And they've been taught, just like cats are taught by humans that live with them, that making noise is a good way to get the instantaneous attention that might result in the things you want, like someone picking you up and feeding you or cuddling you or letting you out or whatever. So these infants, as we had been,
humans.
started out not knowing anything about ourselves. You could put boys and girls of mixed races, all sorts, but the most blonde-haired, blue-eyed child, most Estonian kid, in with someone from Ghana, dark-skinned as could be. They would not care that they were different. They would simply crawl over each other and sort of notice that the others were there, and that was it. We need to be taught all of these precepts, these things from which we develop our ability to reason. And it's perfectly reasonable that we reason. It's the thing we're born to do. But most of our brain is actually dedicated to pattern recognition. We're actually looking for something that we've already seen before and figured out how to resolve. So as infants, as we start to develop into people, and our parents let us know we have an identity. Our identity has a bunch of parameters to it, and our parents give us terrific feedback on whether they're happy or not, in part based on what we do. We know if we're crying, our parents respond by becoming very active and frenetic and worried. We can sense this. We also know that if we're smiling and laughing, our parents seem so happy. Right? So we learn quickly that our happiness is a feedback loop that causes more happiness, until we start doing things like pushing a vase off the floor, off the table onto the floor. Or they are going, no! And we don't know any better, so we push it off and it shatters, just like a cat.
You get excited.
And then they're all very frenetic, but then they're very unhappy, and we know they're unhappy. So we go, okay, so wait, we don't get to be happy because the people we care about aren't happy. So we learn from our parents that happiness is the reward you get. You get to be happy when you've pleased other people. You go to school, you get a poor report card, you haven't pleased the teacher therefore reports on you as being not very good. Now your parents are not happy with you, and it's very hard to be happy when the people you love and treasure are not happy. So as the years go by, we learn more and more how to behave in the ways that will ensure that other people give us the reward we want of allowing us to be happy. And this, of course, is insane because happiness is something we have already.
Yeah.
Okay? We have to not be happy. Happiness is our natural state. Okay? The state that we are by default is happy. And we build this model for ourselves in which we don't get to be happy unless we know we're doing what we are supposed to be doing. Okay? Now, for people like you and me, okay, oppositional defiant disorders, ADD types, people who are not comfortable being subjugated, not able to do a good job while being corralled.
Told what to do. Yeah.
Right. We needed to figure out that, wait a second, our being disapproved of doesn't take away from our happiness. Whereas for most men tend to crave security, just as women crave security, but the security that men crave takes the form of approval.
Approval, yeah.
Okay? And so the reason most men will tend to behave in the ways that they've been told is because they want to know they're being approved of. They're terrified of being disapproved of.
It's like being banished.
Exactly.
So dangerous, evolutionarily.
Absolutely. Now,
Yeah.
there are some people who knew that it didn't matter how well they did, they were never going to be able to accept subjugation. The alpha of the family, usually their father, was going to consistently have a problem with their fundamental confidence in themselves, and they were going to be chased out. So if they weren't strong enough to be able to make it on their own, they were screwed. Right? Whereas most would get sick of being beaten down and would simply accept the rules as they were. Okay? So all other things being equal, there are a category of men and women who are comfortable enough and confident enough to just do what makes sense to them. These are the independent category.
Yeah.
And they're very few and far between.
What are we talking, like 1 in 100, 5 in 100?
Well, let's say it's somewhere between 1 and 5, but less than 5%,
Yeah.
generally 1 in 20 or fewer. But most people show up a little differently. I'd like to come back to this in a minute because I want to get back to what we were starting with.
Yeah.
Let me just sort of close that loop a little bit before people get.
I like the open loops.
I use open loops intentionally because if I don't use open loops, here's what happens. I put forward a challenging idea, an idea that requires a person to play with it for a little while, a person to challenge it inside their mind for a while. If I describe something challenging very quickly and close it very quickly, a person's ego steps in and says, why are you listening to that guy? He's like a Hawaiian shirt. You don't have to listen to him. Okay?
We know what's going on.
Right. That little voice inside one's head that tells them what they're supposed to think about what they're seeing, okay, or what they're experiencing, that's the voice of their ego. And their ego is desperately trying to prevent them from doing anything that might make it be diminished. And since it takes the form of how it projects, other people view it. Right?
Is that how it thinks it's being perceived?
Right, how it imagines it's being perceived.
Yeah.
It doesn't care about your successes. It just cares that nobody else should think poorly of it. So if it can prevent you from making an attempt in its mind, this prevents you from fucking up and having a failure. Because the ego doesn't understand that a success is the result of an attempt, whether it's a positive success or a negative or an undesirable success.
Is this a fundamental, like,
This is a language problem.
I'm imagining that there would be some egos that do understand that.
You can train your ego again, but all language, as far as I can see, and I've been looking into this for some time.
Yeah.
I own an international trademark on successfulness. Okay? Worldwide registered trademark in most jurisdictions that speak English. And I've had considerable fun with that because my whole business model is about teaching people how incredibly simple it is to begin living a life of successfulness and being successful all the time, loving what you're doing and being prepared to try new things. Because as we've already established, the only thing to be embarrassed about is making the same mistake again. Right? And you can't really make a same mistake because after you've done it the first time, if you do it again, that's a choice, not an accident.
Yeah. You've decided. You know the outcome.
Yeah, so we live in a world in which most people consistently do things they know they're going to regret. And this is strange to me.
Is this a self-esteem?
Well, sure, but let's follow it down. So it all plugs together. To close that loop from the beginning, our parents teach us two fundamentally flawed, utterly flawed suppositions. First, that happiness is a reward we get for pleasing other people. And secondly, that it's okay if we're not happy now because we'll be happy when a certain thing happens.
I'll be happy when.
I'll be happy.
I'll be happy when. It's the big, that's the trap.
And of course, as soon as you mistakenly imagine that that's true, you condemn yourself to being miserable now. And it's very hard to get anything accomplished when you're miserable now. Whereas when you're happy now, everything looks like a great idea.
It's a state that is conducive to creating the results you want it.
Exactly.
That you actually
well,
want.
you've just said it perfectly. Creating results. I had a great conversation with one of my favorite people, and a very, very dear friend of mine, a guy by the name of Jamie Smart.
Yes.
Okay, Jamie wrote...
shout outs to Jamie. Tuned in.
He never checks out my stuff. He knows I'm always bad-mouthing him. Jamie's one of my favorite people, and we have a very good relationship. We are each other's backstop. I mean, every qualified, competent psychotherapist in the world needs to have a psychotherapist.
Yeah.
And Jamie and I have been each other's for many years, and it's a nice feeling. He's brilliant and charming and witty and fun, and he has come on tour with me and spoken at a bunch of events, and we've done a lot of good things together for the world. And his stuff that he's working on with Clarity is absolutely wonderful. The notion that, as he describes, the principles behind Clarity, I love his phrasing on that, because instead of using the more conventional, quote-unquote, 3 principles model that was put forward by Sydney Banks, which I've always found to be a very cumbersome way of getting to the end result, which ultimately
Cumbersome as in inefficient?
Cumbersome as in slow. It makes it...
Like clunky?
It's very, very challenging to get through all of the stages of figuring it out until you finally come to the conclusion that the 3 principles are actually just one.
Yeah.
One of my kids, a brilliant young man named Silas, pointed out that in his mind the 3 principles ought to be called the 3 pointers.
Yeah.
Which is a much better way of describing it. Is in fact, if you just look at it from the 3 different frameworks.
So just give us a quick summary of that while we're on it, just to open
Sure,
the loop.
sure. I'm trying actually. Let me leave that open, because that's something people can explore on their own.
Yeah.
There's mountains of excellent writing, not just Jamie's. There's mountains of excellent stuff on the 3 principles and the Sydney Banks philosophies and things. I had come to the same ultimate conclusion that I believe people come to through following the Sydney Banks, as I say, somewhat cumbersome way of doing it.
Yeah.
My way required a quantum change of perspective, and unfortunately that means that the distance between not knowing it and then knowing it so intimately and intrinsically that it becomes part of you is an immeasurable and unpredictable quantity. One day it's all a mystery, and the next day it couldn't be more clear. An epiphany, profound value. Trouble is, I cannot tell a person what steps they need to go to before they've crossed over that mental chasm and been on the other side. I can tell you, for myself, I didn't find a lot of value in going back to Sydney's work. I do find that Jamie's work is a profound enhancement in accomplishing getting people from where they were to where they'd like to be, whether they know they'd like to be there or not.
Yeah.
It's clear as day, and though it requires a number of revisitations before you really sort of throw that switch in your brain and go, aha, all this clunky, heavy bullshit I've been carrying with me all this time was clunky, heavy bullshit, and I'm a hell of a lot better if I cut it off. So while I can't say enough positive things about both the Clarity mindset model that Jamie's put forward and his new book, Results, which was outstanding, those are things that I would strongly encourage people to go and check in on their own.
Yeah.
And rather than I spend the next X number of time trying to work on that, I'm going to close that off by saying this is a well-contained and closed thing in itself. Go do your homework on that. whoever you are, you'll find great value there. There's so much gold there, and you'll realize the real value of things much more clearly. But coming back to the stuff that I work on, when you recognize that your ego is not your friend, okay, it's not your ally, and it's not on your side, it's on its side. And almost everyone has known someone who made a bad call, like had sex with some random stranger where they weren't confident that person didn't have a disease or something, and then instead of going and getting themselves tested right away, they decided, well, you know, I'm just gonna, I'm not even gonna think about that. I'm just gonna let it ride. Because
Put it under the carpet.
that's right. Their ego says, no, you don't want to do that. It's fine. It's fine. Just
Pun unintended.
So people will go through their lives making stupid decisions and then hiding from them, like a big sitcom, right? Like a big, stupid primetime sitcom in which anyone more enlightened looks at it and goes, why don't you just go and talk straight with the people involved? Why don't you just open up with the other stakeholders and let them know the situation? That way, none of this bullshit has to happen. But everyone imagines that it's their job to keep posturing the way other people expect them to be. And their ego is extremely dedicated to that. Their ego says, wait a second. You are not allowed to go and experiment with new things. If you try something new and it doesn't work, that's a failure. Failure is embarrassing, and if you're embarrassed, I become smaller because the rest of the world sees you as humiliated, and that means I'm smaller. I can't allow that, thinks the ego.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the kicker. The ego doesn't understand that a success is just a result, the result of an attempt. So your ego will always advise you not to try anything new. Don't try that. Someone says, here, you can fix it with Photoshop. You open Photoshop, if you haven't worked with it before, you go, oh my God, this is so cumbersome and difficult, so challenging. I'll just find someone else to do it.
Mm.
Easier not to try. When you were a child, nothing in the world was easier than trying something. You knew you didn't know how to do it, and that was okay. You had a child's mind of enthusiasm. You said, okay, I'll try this. Oh, that didn't work. Okay, I'll try this. That didn't work. This didn't work either, but this worked a little. You try and you eventually become good at it. But everyone imagines that they're supposed to instantaneously have an intuitive ability.
Well, this is the common thing that comes up. I'm like, in terms of trying things, it's like, how you can walk, right? You can run. How do you think you learned how to do that? It didn't happen the first time.
We'll take it even a step further. Do you remember when you first learned how to speak?
When I first learned how to speak, it's a while ago. If I thought about it, I probably could, but
You think so? I'll tell you something. Nobody can remember learning their first language.
Yeah.
Because until you had a language,
Nothing to think about it.
you had no way of encoding your memories of the events.
Yeah.
Okay? There was no timeline. You don't remember which came first. I was looking at my diary. I was keeping one from my birth. I remember day one, it said, still tired out after the move. Okay? And then I looked at day two, it said, people are talking to me like I'm some kind of idiot. Anyway, clearly, we have no...
to be like, I know what's going on.
Okay, that's a much bigger problem. Almost no parents ever talk to their children as though they were small adults until they're way further along in their development. Parents talk to children as though they're infants.
Mm.
And then they talk to their children.
What's the your experience with that in terms of have you witnessed people talking to the infants as young? Like,
oh, it makes such a difference.
Yeah.
Oh, it's marvelous.
Yeah.
In fact,
because that's been my experience when I talk. I
talk to your kids like they're people.
I treat my kids like they're human beings, and a lot of people say, oh my God, your kids are so advanced, or like.
It's because you're not hampering them.
Okay.
It's very funny. The idea of becoming a grown-up when you're a little kid. You want to be a grown-up because grown-ups get to make up their own minds. Grown-ups get to drive cars, and grown-ups get to decide when they go to sleep, whether they can stay up and watch this, or what they have to do, whether they go to work. They get to choose. So every little kid wants to be a grown-up. They don't recognize that coming along with becoming a grown-up is accepting responsibility for every decision you make and everything that goes on in your world. But you see, most grown-ups keep that from kids. They don't let kids see what adulthood is. Adulthood is, in fact, where you make your decisions, and the results of your decisions feed back and provide you with your life.
Yeah.
Okay? But grown-ups play the role that they were shown by grown-ups when they were kids. And in fact, their parents showed them a representation of their parents. So it's a poor quality reproduction going back generation after generation.
Like a Chinese whisperer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Of the parents attempting to protect their children by showing them what grown-ups do, not what adults do. And they only know what grown-ups do from their own experience of watching the people who were presumed to have been grown-ups before them. So each generation of grown-ups, as it goes back and back, is a poorer and poorer imprinting. Some
Like
grown-ups,
a more faded version of
lower
the
and lower
original.
resolution quality.
Yeah.
So what happens is some people's grown-ups believed in hitting one another. And so that becomes the way that grown-ups behave. And some people's grown-ups had temper tantrums. And some people's grown-ups cried a lot to get their way. And so the kids imprint this because they're shown it. And they try and be grown-ups. And they know that as soon as they can, they're going to throw that switch and suddenly put away childish things and only do grown-up things. They're going to say, well, I don't need to worry about that anymore. I now know everything. It's kind of like getting out of university or high school with a diploma and saying, I can now stop learning forever. They close the last page on the book. You may now, you don't have to learn anything. So what I was saying is, every child wants to become a grown-up so they have independent control of their lives. And they think that being a grown-up is doing the things they believed that grown-ups do. And their only model of what grown-ups do is their own parents and their friends' parents demonstrating for them what grown-ups do. So I have a friend who throughout her life was very poorly adjusted because she was a very kinky young lady and did a bunch of things.
Poorly adjusted, or
she was
by the world standards?
Yeah,
or?
she had a lot of trouble within herself as well.
Okay.
She was psychologically burdened by the belief that she was being poorly behaved and that this was not a great idea and that she was a naughty girl, despite the fact that she wasn't, in fact, naughty. She was an excellent girl. She just had tastes that weren't well established in public. Her parents never came clean with her about a bunch of things, and so I helped her clean out her parents' home when her second parent passed away. And when we were uncovering the stuff in their attic, including the tickle trunk with all the BDSM equipment, the spreader bars and the bondage equipment, which she had never in her entire life imagined. She never occurred to her that her parents were into power exchange and things like that.
She had no recollection.
So she had no way to know it. I mean, if she had been exposed to it when she was too young to have registered it, she didn't realize it. Her parents had always presented themselves as being good, upright, conservative, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant types.
Yeah.
And so she punished herself instead of realizing that she came by this totally honestly. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
Yeah.
And that there was no problem. If her parents had said to her, hey, honey, whatever it is that gets you off, that's fine. Right? Do what suits you. Fuck the rest of the world. Instead, she was punishing herself until her late 30s.
Self-flagellating.
Yeah. Only she would have been much happier than be flagellating someone else or maybe being on the receiving end. She was a switch.
Yeah.
But the whole point is, because her parents did not let her know what adulthood was like, and instead her relationship was very tenuous because she was always certain they would disapprove of her, because they always believed they had to demonstrate to her that they would disapprove of her for doing the sorts of things that they were doing.
Because they disapproved of themselves?
Because they were raised to disapprove of themselves, despite the fact they were going to do it.
Yeah.
They at least knew they weren't damaging their children by encouraging their children to do what they wanted to do.
What they want to do.
So we live in a world
Crazy idea.
in which parents don't understand and unwittingly program their children to think you must do what is expected of you. The only way you get the reward of feeling good about yourself is when you're doing what other people are expecting you to do. They condemn, without meaning to, individualism. They raise children to think you're supposed to do unto others as you would like them to do unto you. But that's just crazy.
I think that's flawed.
Right? Instead, you have to do unto others the way they would like you to do unto them.
Well, that makes total sense. I've been saying this for a long time. So
The whole notion that other people are like you is incredibly poor expectation management.
yeah, it's terrible. Yeah.
Every person's responsible for managing their own expectations of themselves.
I might like being punched in the face.
Unless you tell me that that's the truth, I'm going to resist doing it. And frankly, I don't like punching people in the face. So even if it was something that would do it for you, I'm afraid I'd have to outsource that. Yeah? Sometimes in life you have to outsource things. My sweetie and I have lived together in an incredibly happy, completely open relationship. And when I say open, I don't mean like open fly or open gate door. I mean open in the sense of glasnost. Okay? Nothing suppressed, totally transparent, no secrets. Okay? If it happens in my head, whether it happens in real life or not, I share it with her, get her feedback, let her know where my mind is. If I tell her there's this girl I think is really fun and cool, she'll say, would I like her? If I say, I don't know if you guys would get along so well, she'll say, well, go and sleep with her and let me know. Okay? Because my sweetie knows that what she needs in order for her to feel the most powerfully happy and enriched is that not only must she for herself feel great and happy in the things that she's doing, the people she treasures and loves have to also be broadcasting their delight and happiness in the world. So if she were to say to me, gee babe, I'm going to go see this new Colin Farrell chick flick with a bunch of my girlfriends and then go for a few drinks, I won't be home until 2, I'll say, knock yourself out, babe, I'm super happy you're doing this, I'm really glad you're getting out with your friends and doing things that make you feel whole, and if you need me to come and pick you up, just give me a message, I'll drop everything and come get you. Otherwise, I'll keep myself entertained. Everything is wonderful in the world, and thank you so much for not requiring me to be a participant. Right?
Mm-hmm, thank you. Yeah.
Right. And similarly, if she said she had met a couple of guys, the front four from some American football team, and they were really charming and fun, and she was kind of in the mood, so she was going to spend the night with them, and she'd see me in the morning. I'd say, knock yourself out, babe, let me know if there's anything I can do for you, if you need me to pick you up. If you have any problems, you know I'm just a phone call away, and I'm really glad you don't need me to be a participant in this. But enjoy everything in your life. So if my girlie wants someone who wants her to crap on his chest, it's not going to be me, but if that's something she wants, knock yourself out. I'm not good at running a feather over someone and sensualizing them. That was not part of the things I'm good at. And you can't fake a fetish.
Yeah.
Right? There are people who go crazy happy causing another person to be on pins and needles for a long time. Not something I'm good at. So that I'll outsource. I've got terrific friends who are specialists in that world. Guys like John Lichtenberg here in Las Vegas with his erotic dominance, who I'm super happy to outsource people to. Say, listen, you guys are going to get along fine.
I love that sort of stuff personally. Yeah.
There are the things I'm great at and the things other people are great at, and we're always happy to let people find the things they're after.
What do you, a lot of what the feedback on that some of these ideas is often, I often hear, I get it conceptually, like totally understand it mentally,
right.
But the emotion, like,
of course,
doesn't allow me to do it.
That's because, and this is something I'm very proud of having worked out. In fact, I'm going to share something with you and with your audience. Guys, here's something I'm really proud of. Okay? It's part of something I refer to as ego mastery. And I've been sharing this for a long time. Because your ego is mostly cerebral, it operates as an intellectual project. It is very concerned with defending itself. That's what matters to it most of all, nothing else. And it will do everything it can to stymie you. And so I have realized that you can communicate messages to your ego that your ego will understand. You just have to do it in a way that's persuasive enough. One of the things that you can communicate to your ego is to reassign the meaning of the word success. When you say to your ego, every time you have said to me, don't do that, don't go over and approach that woman, she wants someone taller, blonder, smarter, with prettier eyes, in better shape, richer, whatever. Every time your ego has talked you out of going and trying this, or don't go ask your boss for a raise, he's going to be angry with you for X, Y, and Z, he's not, don't, whatever it is your ego is trying to talk you out of doing. And it pretends it's you. It pretends it's the voice of reason. But it's really the voice of your ego trying to defend itself.
From being in a vulnerable position.
From being in a situation where it imagines other people will think less well of it, which means it is reduced in scale. It will not allow that. So when your ego gets uppity and speaks to you and tells you what to do, if you listen to it, every time you have it talk you out of doing something, you have denied yourself of making an attempt. No attempt equals no result. No result, no success. So every time your ego talks you out of something, you have no success. Now, people think the opposite of a success is a failure, and that's absolutely correct. But since every attempt yields an outcome, which is a success, every attempt never yields a failure. It only yields a success. So what has the potential to yield a failure? The only thing that yields a failure
is a non-attempt.
Is no attempt.
Yeah.
Failure to engage is the only sure route to misery. Failure every time. So when your ego starts to get this, you have to retask your mind. You have to grab hold of the notion that every time my ego has fooled me into giving in to its fears, and therefore I've had a failure every single time. Every time, failure every time. So doing the same thing again and again, expecting a better result, well, that's madness.
Yeah.
Right? What could be more embarrassing and humiliating than you're being prevented from succeeding in your life or following your destiny because you're foolishly repeating the same mistake again and again, right?
And again and again.
So when you get this, then every time your ego talks you out of something, you have to self-flagellate, for all intents and purposes, intellectually. You have to punish yourself for the humiliation you must feel, the embarrassment you must feel over making the same mistake again and again. So that your ego goes, holy shit, I'm being punished. I'm becoming smaller. I'm feeling less good because I'm telling this guy not to make a shot, not to take the shot. Whereas if I let him make the shot, no matter how it works, he's going to learn from it.
He's going to have feedback.
And that is a success. And I can feel proud and satisfied by my collection of successes. See, here's the funny thing about successfulness. In order to become successful, you have to have a lot of successes. That's where the fullness comes from. So the thing about it is, you ask any entrepreneur, anyone you think of as tremendously successful, okay? Talk to Elon Musk or Richard Branson or whomever, they'll all tell you, any successful entrepreneur will tell you about when they got lucky. They'll say, yeah, I trudged and I got lucky.
Yeah.
And the thing that's so funny about it is, most people say, well, I never got a lucky break. It never worked for me. And the difference is, they tried and it didn't work. And they tried and it didn't work. And they tried and they tried and they tried and they tried and they tried. And then they got lucky.
Well, you increase your chances, the odds, don't you? If you
Luck
like the law of
favors
averages.
the prepared. Okay? On my 200th attempt, I got lucky. Whereas most people stopped trying on the 5th attempt.
As soon as they met failure, you know.
Right. And so this is the problem. The problem is our egos accept this model that says that to try and not get an ideal result means it's a failure and humiliating. As a child, we hadn't thrown that switch to be grown-ups where we were now, since we're grown-ups, we need to know everything. Because as children, we know grown-ups know everything. That's where we get our answers. Grown-ups tell us stuff, and we know they must be true because they came from grown-ups. Well, grown-ups don't know everything. In fact, most grown-ups know very, very, very little. The earlier they became grown-ups, almost certainly the less they know. I have refused my entire life, adamantly, I will never grow up.
Yeah.
I will never fit in, and I will never settle down. Because all three of those are statements of personal abandonment. Right? When you're prepared to fold yourself into what others expect of you, rather than being the person you are. So I say, to hell with that. Okay? I'm a 50-year-old boy and loving it. My life works incredibly well. I am surrounded by amazing people, some of whom travel halfway around the world before we get to know each other. I'm surrounded because we're all on this planet together and there's no place else we can be, at least not as far as I can tell. We're all here, we're all working towards the same thing. And this thing about this game of life, the one that our parents unintentionally teach us, can never be won. They don't teach us it all at once. They say, oh, you know, I'll be happy when my boss retires and I can take over. I'll be happy when I get the key to the executive washroom. I'll be happy when I get this new house, this new car, this new secretary. And therefore, they live in abject misery the whole time, and you watch them and you think, a poor guy, he's having such a hard time. But at least he's got all the trappings of success. We call them trappings. He's got the nice house, he's got the nice car, he's got the nice family, all of which make it impossible for him to maneuver freely because he's got to engage as a slave, miserably doing things he would not do if it were not for that he needs those results just to keep his lifestyle going.
Just for like those are the ownership, the things that own.
That's exactly
that own them.
That's exactly right. So remember this for yourselves. Anything you can't walk away from owns you. Anything that you cannot say, well, I can replace that, where it will prevent you from getting on with your life, that is not your anything, except maybe your ball and chain. Okay? The difference in my mind between an employee and a slave is that the employee imagines he gets to choose his master. When the slaves were emancipated in the 1860s in the United States, it was actually a punitive measure done against the states that wanted to leave the Union. There were 4 Union states that had slaves, but those slaves weren't emancipated. When Lincoln, quote-unquote, emancipated the slaves, he was only doing it to punish the southern states. The thing about it that was so interesting is it was actually the world's largest single-handed governmental layoff. Because everyone who had job security, a roof over their head, food, yes, slavery totally sucks. Never in a million years would I suggest slavery is anything other than abominable. However, everyone who the previous day knew where they were sleeping, knew where they were getting food from, knew that if they were sick, they would get medical attention, knew if they had a new child, they would be able to attend to the child for some time while the work that they needed to do would get done by others. Okay? All the things we imagine are part of employment were things that were taken away from all of these people when they were, quote-unquote, freed. So make no mistake, freedom is something you have to want. Freedom is something you must grasp for and take. Because freedom that is given is abandonment. You take your dog to the local park, take him off the chain, say, go, be free, you're free. I've given you your freedom. Get in your car, you drive out of town for a few days. What do you think the odds are he's going to be sitting outside your house frantic when you get home? Okay? If you don't want freedom, if your parents took you someplace and said, okay, you're on your own, that would be abandonment. Pretty awful. You have to reach the point where you believe that you can manage for yourself and you have to take those steps on your own. Being pushed out of the nest when you don't wish it is a pretty awful thing. So while I absolutely condemn slavery on every level, and I believe that most people in the world, without realizing it, are fundamentally enslaved.
But they're choosing it, at least.
They're not even aware of it. It doesn't occur to them. Before you can become free, you first have to understand that you are in bondage. Before you can emancipate yourself, you have to recognize the degree to which oppressive, ungodly, awful things that we have established for ourselves are boots standing on our throats, preventing us from freely negotiating.
But it's an important point you just make there of you have to be able to choose for yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so,
like you have to be aware that you are making a choice in the first place.
Right. So I call myself what I think is a very clever portmanteau. I built a new word. I took the word manumission, which is the process of manumitting. To manumit someone is to emancipate them. It's the same word.
Yeah.
Okay. I call the people who have studied the stuff that I'm sharing and take it with them to try and communicate it to other people. So everything I've done, it's interesting, I've been doing this now for about 14 years. All of my videos are available, the ones that are just me, are all available for free. I've been sharing them for free. I've had millions of people download Seductive Reasoning. It delights me that there's still constant pull-through. I've been sharing this stuff for free because I want the world to be a better place, and I'm hoping that people will grab hold of what I've shared and start making it a better place for themselves, and that they'll take the information and share it with other people. I don't care who people learn this stuff from. It doesn't matter. I just want them to understand it. And so I've been sharing this stuff, and I call the people who are similarly taking this stuff and sharing it manumissionaries.
I like it.
People who have taken on the mission of manumitting others. I'd rather not deal with that, so I'm not going to bother. Let's just keep going. People have to respect that it's my home, and if they ring my doorbell and I don't come to it, it's not anything to do with them. Now, where was I?
Manumissionary.
Oh yeah, so as I say, for the manumissionaries out there, I've been working very hard to help them understand. We as humans have the ability to reason. It's our one great, wonderful unifying thing. We have the ability to have predictive conceptualizations of what will happen next. We can make decisions taking into account whatever data is around, figuring out what we think we'd like to have happen, and take steps. As a consequence, we never need to live in fear. I'm, for all intents and purposes, entirely fearless. People say, well, that's madness. I say, well, it isn't. It isn't. People say, oh yeah, well, if you're so fearless, go lie down in this traffic. I say, well, it's very straightforward. You see, I'm not afraid of traffic. I'm not afraid of cars. I'm not afraid of being hit by a car.
You can do arithmetic.
But I have a pretty good idea of how that would play out, and I don't wish it. Right?
Yeah.
The results, I don't stick my face into a fan because I'm pretty confident what the outcome would be, and that's not an outcome I'd like.
So the reasoning, is that something you have to learn, or?
It's something you have to become aware of.
Yeah,
you need to
it's
recognize
something-
you have the urge to be afraid of pain. And then you go, well, wait a second, I actually want to get stronger. I have to be prepared to confront that doing exercise can be painful. If I want to have this painful root canal problem dealt with, I need to go and have someone deal with it. I'm going to need to have something painful done to eliminate this pain. Sometimes you can only fight fire with fire. You burn out the area around it, or that fire will simply continue to prosper without you. So taking into account that these things we're afraid of, these things that are issues for us.
So it's coming back to, I get it conceptually, but emotionally.
Right, so this exactly.
Yeah.
So when you recognize that your ego, it exists in your subconscious. No one else can hear your ego. We think about demonic possession. It's just your ego fucking with you. Okay? Your ego whispers in your ear, often in words. For some people, it puts in images, or some people, it just triggers their emotional core. And their emotional core responds exactly as though it had been experiencing something real.
In real time, yeah.
So your emotional core communicates with your central mind by sending its take on things. And we've evolved. Our emotional core is very, very powerful, and it's evolved over hundreds of thousands of years to teach us things we ought to be aware of. Sometimes they're fugazi, they don't exist. Sometimes they're very genuine. And it sometimes takes work to remind yourself that the fears you're feeling, which are intrinsic and underlying fears, are not real and don't need to be paid attention to. But this is the problem. This is where things like the clarity model and 3P stuff really comes into play. You start to realize that 100% of our existence takes place inside our head.
100%?
Well,
What about the outer world? Like if I tip the cup over?
That's fine.
Yeah.
Whether you notice it, that you notice it takes place inside your brain. Your brain
The experience of it.
could be in a jar, plugged into a supercomputer, sending you signals you would be incapable of recognizing were any different from your actual experiences. Okay? Person can push on your head and convince you that you're getting jabbed in the arm. Okay? Because everything is taking place inside your skull. Your whole existence takes place as a simulation. Okay? And as soon as you recognize this, and I'm not suggesting, there are no repercussions to your actions. I'm not suggesting that at all. I'm saying the things you pay attention to are the things that matter. So much is going on outside of your world of view. Yes, it's true, you might make a decision that will end up with your death, and then it doesn't matter anymore. For many people, the ability to make that final decision is the most important thing, and the result isn't. Whether you're operating from the presumption that some alien space god is in fact going to reward you in the afterlife for whatever, or you made the decision because you knew or you believed that you'd never be able to forgive yourself if you didn't, right? Jumping in front of someone to defend someone else, when you know there's a serious risk of your dying, you make that decision because the other option wasn't real for you. Right? People forget that honor is a luxury. Do you understand?
Yeah.
When you're starving, and your children are starving, the people you treasure and love are starving, and the options are break into your neighbor's fridge or let them starve, you break into your neighbor's fridge. Right? The luxury is actually a very inexpensive one, the luxury of honor. It just requires staying a little bit ahead of that. Okay? But people from all time, people have given their lives for the greater good because in their mind the punishment they would have to experience, that they would be putting on themselves for having not done this honorable thing, was far too great to be conceived. If not for egocentrism, no one would sacrifice their life for the government of their country winning a battle. Never happened. Okay? So that people would rather fight and often die or kill to protect their preconceptions, ones that they've never challenged, ones that they accept because they've always known it to be true and have never ever investigated to know why they know it was true. They knew it was true because their grown-ups had told them it was true. So it must be true. It's like if you shave, your hair grows back in thicker and faster, right?
Something like that.
You've probably heard this. You know anyone who's got a completely shaven head? It doesn't go back faster and faster. Your hair grows at a constant rate.
Hers is about 6 inches a year or something.
It goes about an inch every 2 to 4 weeks, depending on your age and your hormone levels. So it's either 6 inches or a foot per year in general. Well, the first day when your hair comes out of the follicle after you've waxed or plucked a hair follicle, or the hair follicle comes online because only about a quarter of the DNA point are active. The first day, the spindle-like monofilament of hair comes out. It's so wispy and thin it's barely noticeable. The second day, like a tree, it's now growing on the previous day. The third day and the fourth day too. Until about the fourth day it gets to be about as thick as it's going to get. So by the time you see it, as it breaks through of your skin, it's now 4 days old or so, and it's barely noticeable. The next day, the hair you're seeing that you think of as a 2-day growth is actually 5 days. So now you're seeing the second day's worth of thickness. The next day, still more thickness. And the fourth day, and the next day after, you're now seeing it as thick as it's going to get. So you go, oh shit, I better shave. Now you shave, and the next day, it's still exactly as thick as it was the previous day. Because the 4 days of development that you hadn't paid attention to have still already taken place. So now you cut your hair off, at that point it comes back thick and rich. If you pluck it, or wax it, or electrode it, or whatever system you use to get rid of it, if you engage some depilatant to get the hair off for you, and then the next day, if any hair shows up, it's the first day's growth, which is still wispy and super thin. So it looks, now it takes several days for that hair to get out to the outside, it looks like your hair grows back in thinner and lighter. Okay? So people rebuild this model, but the truth is, the hair is growing exactly the same way it always did. Right? Just a question of when you're exposing it to the world and when you're cutting it off. So we accept these things that school teachers tell us about. If you swallow chewing gum, it stays in your system for years and years. I had a school principal.
These are superstitions.
Well, it's not. It's actually,
Yeah.
it's worse.
Urban
It's worse.
myth.
They're urban myths.
Urban myth.
Here's how it plays out. There was a vice principal at a school I went to who had a jar of muriatic acid, which is watered down hydrochloric acid, like you have in your stomach, in which he had a big chunk of chewed gum on demo, so that people would be afraid. I said to him, as a child, I said, if I swallow a marble, it leaves my system in about 24 hours. If I swallow that piece of gum, it'll probably leave my system in about 24 hours too. Anything that your stomach can't deal with, it just pushes out. And he said, yes, Johnny, that's true, but that's not helpful. I said, explain what you mean. Now, I had a pretty good relationship with this vice principal. He said, here's the thing. We have a problem. We need kids not to chew gum in school. And we know that if they chew gum in school, we need to be able to punish them for chewing gum in school, because if they don't get punished, they'll keep doing it. I said, so what's the problem? Why can't they chew gum in school? Mostly, he said, because kids take out the gum when it no longer tastes good, and they stick it on the chair underneath, or they toss it on the carpet, or they stick it in some girl's hair, and then we have a problem with parents. I said, okay, but they do that because they've been taught not to swallow gum. Otherwise, they just swallow it when it didn't have any flavor left. He said, no, they don't do that. I said, well, the only reason they don't do that is because they've been trained that if they swallow it, it stays in their stomach for years and years. Everyone's afraid and inhibited about this. I was a child explaining this to the principal. He said, well, here's the situation we've got. The custodians don't want to pull they don't want to pull chewing gum out of the floor, on the carpet. They don't want to pull chewing gum off the bottom of chairs. The teachers don't want to sit and watch the kids chewing gum. If the teacher calls you out chewing gum and you're brave enough to swallow the gum, the teacher can't punish you, because she can't catch you red-handed. So in order to be able to catch you red-handed, we have to inhibit you to not swallow gum, so that we can punish you to keep you from chewing gum in the first place. I said, do you understand the nature of this problem? He said, yeah, but what do you expect me to do about it? I said, you're the grown-up. True story, every word of it, including the part of it, you're the grown-up. You're supposed to be able to solve this problem. End result, people believe it. They believe it because they were told it, and it never occurred to them to chase it down. So I put it to you, fellas, everybody. If you cannot remember when you proved something to yourself, anything that you take for granted, anything you believe you know because everybody knows, odds are actually very good that nobody knows, or that it's a falsehood that nobody challenges. What's at the core of the earth? Most people will say a big molten ball of iron. We've thought that for hundreds of years. We've thought it because, firstly, the earth has magnetic poles, and at the time, the only thing we knew to be magnetic was iron. The second thing is volcanoes spew up lots and lots of matter. Some of it contains a lot of iron, and it's big molten lava. And it must be coming from the center of the earth, right? Because there's got to be no question that it travels 2,500 miles, 4,000 kilometers to get from the center of the earth to the surface. Well, we now have every reason to believe that it doesn't travel more than a few miles to get to the surface of the earth. No human being has ever seen anything that's below 10 kilometers down. We have no idea what's down there. We can do simulations based on models. In science, we have no option but to work with models of reality. And the thing to remember always, virtually all models are wrong, but some models are useful. And if we...
I like models.
Well, I have spent a lot of time with models. I remember once I was told by someone, I only date models. I said, I only date the real thing. But all other things being equal, scientific models begin with a bunch of axiomatic things that do not need to be proved. We're going to accept these as the baseline fundament for our model.
So like what, flat earth?
Sure, or that the earth is a sphere that has a big molten pile within it. Okay, nothing on which to go except that's the
Where's
model.
lava come from on a flat earth?
Well, since I have no confidence in the flat earth model, I'm going to not bother pursuing that one. Okay, I dated a girl who was in fact a model, but she was the poster girl for the Flat Earth Society. It's a little disappointing, all things considered. I interested a friend of mine, got augmentation. Now she's just kick-ass. On a serious note, we know very, very, very little about much. We don't know. I can ask you this question. This is a fun question. I want to come back to ego mastery because it's particularly important. But if I ask you, what will happen if I stop exerting any force on this keychain?
If you stop holding it,
Yeah.
I'm guessing it's going to drop to the table.
Pretty good guess. Think it'll happen again?
Yes.
Matter of fact, I'm going to go further. I'm going to speed this up and get it. Yeah, we're pretty confident that'll happen every time. Now, if I ask you to tell me why that happens without using any religious terms, okay? Nothing that is semantically equivalent to that's God's will.
Yeah.
Okay? Can you tell me why this happens without using any religious terms?
Not really. Like gravity. I'd say
Okay,
gravity.
okay.
I'd say gravity.
There you go.
I've never seen gravity.
There's that religious term again.
I've never seen gravity.
Gravity isn't an explanation.
Yeah.
It's a psychological, it's a consciousness terminating cliche.
Yeah.
It's a way we can stop thinking about, oh, it's gravity. Oh, thank goodness we have the answer. It's gravity. What is gravity? Gravity is the description of what causes it. That's all.
Yeah.
Gravity could exactly be translated to that's just the way it is, or it's God's will.
Yeah.
Okay? It's a religious term. It gives no value.
Unseen power.
Right.
Yeah.
Unseen, undescribable, inexplicable power. But we can work with it. So within that model, the model in which things which have mass are pulled towards other things that have mass, that's a pretty good model. We can understand all sorts of stuff with that model. We can understand why the Earth not only has tides, because the moon going around the Earth is very massive, and water being very promiscuous and opportunistic, it goes to the source of the greatest gravity pulling towards it. So it pulls towards the moon when the moon is overhead, and it also pulls towards the far side of the Earth from where the moon is. So we get two high tides each day, a smaller high tide and a larger high tide. Because when the moon is here and the Earth is here, the water that's closer to this side floods in this way. And the water that's closer to this side of the Earth, it adds the Earth's gravity and the moon's gravity, and it pulls it to this side.
Mm-hmm.
So we actually get two high tides per day. Okay? We also get two low tides per day. This is pretty fascinating stuff. And it only makes sense if we understand that the moon is orbiting around the Earth and that the Earth is a sphere and that the water that's on the outside of the Earth is pulled towards the greatest gravity that can be reached. Either the portion of the Earth that's behind it is keeping it towards the Earth while it's being pulled towards the moon, or the portion of the Earth that's in front of it and the moon are added together to force it. So it's always thinnest, it's always lowest tide at the apogee of the side.
Moon side.
Right, the non-moon side.
Yeah.
Or at the half moon side, half the rotation, 45 degrees, 90 degrees, sorry. These things are valuable, and if you apply them, you'll recognize, well, this is pretty cool stuff. We can use mathematical models to determine all sorts of stuff. But even mathematics has to contain contradictory situations, has to contain a portion that is absolutely inaccurate. Try doing a quadratic equation. You're dealing with -4 or +4. These things are fundamentally just within our model, and we have to operate within regions of unpredictability. But some things are highly predictable in the large and utterly chaotic in the small, like weather. A lot of people these days are all caught up. Just at the moment, there's a big hurricane taking place just off the coast of Texas and inland on Texas. And some people say, oh, it's because of climate change and because of what humans are doing. Some people are saying it's because God is angry. And they're both right. Sure, go with that. Work with whatever you like. For myself, hurricanes have always come up. We've had a long, long period of no significant hurricanes, despite the fact that we've been currently worried tremendously about the disastrous impact of human actions on the environment. I think the United States has done tremendous things to protect and enhance the quality of life and the environment in which we all live, while many other countries are trying to catch up with the 100 years or so of industrialization the United States has had as an advantage, and are polluting the hell out of the world. And the idea that the United States should therefore not only be doing things technologically to make things better, but also should be sacrificing itself for the betterment of other countries that at the same time are encouraged to go ahead and smoke up, is appalling to me. And so we live in a world full of people who are listening to a media barrage and expected not to do the math. They're expected to do what their betters are telling them. We know that these grown-ups are telling us this on television must be true. So to me, I say, if you can't prove it to yourself, do not accept it as real. It's just a model, and it might be entirely wrong. Getting caught up about it is kind of crazy. Now, if there are things you can do to improve your immediate surroundings, go for it. At the same time, recognize that your ego wants you never to look bad to third parties. So your ego will try and keep you from doing whatever it is you'd like unless it's absolutely confident you can do it. Meanwhile, you have this problem. Everyone has this problem. And I have a wonderful little model for this you might enjoy. One day you decide you're going to go out and do something that works for you. And your ego, which takes the form in this case of a crotchety old bastard sitting on the front porch of the house you share. He's sitting there with a cigar, a cheroot in his mouth. He's sitting in his rocking chair. You walk out the door. He says, "Where are you going, you big idiot? Get back in there before someone sees you." You go, I'm all's good here. Thank you for your interest. And by acknowledging it, but not arguing with it, you can walk out the door and get on with your life. If you try and convince it, no, everything's cool, I've got things under control, it'll try and argue with you. And as soon as you empower it by communicating with it, it'll start pulling up horror stories from your history. Oh, this is like that time you did. It'll find ways to prevent you from getting any further. So you must learn, when your ego is trying to stop you, to say thank you in a dismissive format.
Is it like, thank you, I've got this?
You don't have to say that. Just, gotcha, thank you,
Yeah.
and get on with it. Now, your ego will sometimes communicate with you in words and notions. It'll say, "Where are you going? What are you doing with that half a dozen rolls of duct tape on your arm?" "Oh, I'm going to go out and get myself some ducks." "You can't get ducks with duct tape. What's wrong with you, boy? Some kind of idiot. It's not even the same word." "Thank you." And when you come back a few hours later with a whole bunch of ducks all twined up inside the duct tape, your ego will watch you as you walk through the door and won't say a word. Next day you walk downstairs with a big roll of chicken wire. "Where are you going with that chicken wire? You look like an idiot. Get back in the house." "Thank you." "No, seriously, man, where are you going with that chicken wire? You're just making a fool of us. Now get back." "I'm just going to go grab some chickens." "You can't get chickens with chicken wire. What's wrong with you?" "Thank you." And you go off and you do it. When you come back with a bunch of chickens wrapped up in the chicken wire, your ego. And the next morning you walk downstairs with a bushel basket full of pussy willow. And your ego will say, "Hang on, I'll get my coat. I'm coming with you." Well, it doesn't take too long before your ego starts to realize you're not a colossal fuck up and the things that you're doing actually work. And then it stops worrying about itself, because that's all it's ever worried about is itself. And it starts to think, okay, well, maybe there's something to this. Maybe we're actually going to look better to the world because we've had these successes. Okay? So as soon as you start to teach your ego that a success is desirable and a failure is embarrassing, and the only failures are not making attempts, pretty soon your ego stops being your haranguing committee and becomes your cheering set. Go on, what are you waiting for?
Well, that's the idea of, like, somebody asked me, where do you fail? Like, that was a question posed for, where in life do you regularly fail? And I said, I don't. I said that you either win or you learn. You know, that
never a loss, only a lesson.
Only a lesson. And if I'm doing that, then if I'm trying, then it's an impossible thing, failure. Like,
There's no failure.
There's
There's a
feedback, there's
possibility.
feedback.
There's a possibility of making a permanent or terminal mistake.
Yeah, like die or something.
Right. And that can happen.
And that
but,
can.
But that's okay.
Yeah.
People have to understand that's okay.
At least I made the decision in the first place.
That's right. And if your decisions are reasonable, you've applied reasoned confidence, you made your decision understanding and appreciating that intellectually it made sense and you're comfortable that you've done enough homework to have a good idea.
It feels okay.
Your emotions are completely comfortable and confident with it. There's no part of you that's having a hard time. And your psychology, the practical application of your philosophy, we call it conscience, is not giving you grief. Then go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
Right? Today, you found that money clip.
Yeah.
There were no people around to whom you could have identified it who had any reason for you to believe had any responsibility for it. I said to you, you could walk it inside and give it to the storekeeper. The odds are good the storekeeper will say, "Yeah, take it."
Yeah.
Because here in Vegas, no one is going to come back looking for it.
Yeah.
There's a joke about, someone says, "Hey, just before I get started on this, I want to tell the audience, if someone lost a huge wad of currency all wrapped up in a rubber band, someone turned in the rubber band. If it's yours, please come and collect it." So, for me, philosophically speaking, it's in your nature to want to give this back to the people that earned it. But none of them were forthcoming. So there was absolutely no reason at all to feel uncomfortable, and we just talked it over and decided that was good for you, windfall. And certainly you have no reason to feel guilty or anxious because it was not deprived from anyone who had a legitimate right to it, and the next person who found it would have done exactly the same thing you did. So it's yours, and enjoy it. Next round's on you. All things being equal, most people live their lives presuming that there are certain things that they must not try because their ego speaks up and says, no, that's way beyond you. That's not, no. And of course, it comes back to a very important question. How do you eat an elephant?
Slowly.
That's right, one bite at a time. And as soon as you recognize a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, if you don't take that step, you're not going to get anywhere.
Well, it kind of reminded me of the, I remember you telling me once about an oasis. Do you remember this?
I use that often. I explain. A lot of the work I do is a little frustrating. I describe myself as having taken on what I call a bodhisattva role. It's a Buddhist term for someone who has seen enlightenment. And instead of simply diving on into it and giving up their connections to the normal world of rudimentary BS that most people go through, they've recognized that they would rather commit their time to helping other people reach enlightenment.
To come back from the light to spread the light, to light the other candles.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So for me, I often say that I have this problem in some ways, and that is I'm trying to get these messages across to people. I'm doing everything I can to share them. It's kind of like being with a huge congregation all walking along in the same direction through the desert, or a huge wagon train or camel series. And I recognize that the way we're going is getting us nowhere. There's no reason to believe things will improve.
If we're all heading in this
We're all direction. So I say, okay, I'm going to go look for something better. Would anyone like to come with me? Sometimes people will come along. It's great. So one guy says, sure, I'll come along. And two of us ride off on our camels and we go in a different direction. We ride for a couple of days till we find this wonderful oasis with plenty of food and obviously a source of fresh running water. We test to make sure it's not a mirage. We go to the water, climb in the water. This is wonderful. Now all we have to do is tell everyone else about it. So I say, I'll tell you what, let's go. He goes, oh, no, forget it. I'm not going back to tell them. I'm happy. This is what I've been looking for all this time. I said, well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to go back and tell them. So I take the other guy's camel, I bring it back with me, I head back to the wagon train or whatever, which is exactly where I expected it to be, continuing along on the same course. And I get there and I see, guys, great news, we found the oasis. It's wonderful, we have to reroute over, this is much better. And they'll go, oh, you're crazy, Johnny. What's wrong with you? Look at you riding back here. You've obviously killed the other fellow and stolen his camel. So, okay, guys, you're not understanding. Look, let me show you. Anyone who wants to can ride this other camel. Come with me. We'll go and prove it, and we'll come back. I'll take as many people as want to go to the oasis. Right now, I just need someone to commit to come back with me so you can also tell them.
Yeah.
And of course, they all get on their camels and they come with me. Not everyone, but the people who are really interested in a change, a betterment in their world.
Do you get that response of,
all the time.
Sure, you killed the person?
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time. All the time. People think I'm operating a cult. I say, you guys don't understand something. If I wanted to run a cult, it would be the easiest thing in the world. Okay? But I'm so anti that. I'm not trying to make pipsqueak versions of Johnny. I'm trying to make full-size versions of everybody else. So that I can enjoy them. I get no more value out of there being more of me. But believe me, if I met another one like me, I would be so happy. We would have such a great time. Meanwhile, off we go. And when I come back with another person, and everyone else's camels are... I've now taken all the camels of all the other people so that there'll be still other camels to drive back with. Mm-hmm. They get there and they say, you two are in conspiration. You're conspired. You killed off all the other people. Tell me what it's going to take for you guys to believe this. We found something worth going to. It's a huge enhancement over what you guys are struggling with. You're all freaking miserable. You barely want to stay alive while you're doing what you're doing. Come along, I'll show you a better way. So I keep going back and forth, but I'm reaching the point where I'm ready to say, okay, this is my last trip. Okay? I'm going to stay. When I get there, I'm staying.
Yeah.
Okay? You guys are going to have to come back and tell people I'm not crazy.
Yeah. This is the emancipation.
That's right. So I'm trying to make these emancipators, these
manu-missionaries,
who are on this mission to help other people. And the truth is, it's happening very quickly.
Yeah.
I remember when I first started to communicate the messages I was communicating, I was speaking to the world of the men's personal development community, to guys who wanted to learn how to become good with girls.
Yeah.
Most of them actually belong to what we call now the pickup community or the pickup industry. They were there because they wanted to know what magical words they could use to get girls to go to bed with them. And I was always very clear. Women must become aroused by a man before they want to engage with that man in sex.
Yeah.
Becoming aroused is what happens when a woman finds a man who has 4 characteristics, or at least 3 of these 4. And these 4 characteristics will be found in every man by every woman in a relationship with that man who's in love with him. The 4 characteristics are: he must be a confident, masculine presence who loves and respects himself. He will not give in to her whims. He'll compromise for her. He'll do things for her as a favor, but only when it's understood in advance that this is not something that he would normally do, but he'll do it for her if she asks.
Yeah.
There's a contract of appreciation. Okay?
Yeah.
So the first thing is he's a confident masculine presence who knows who he is, loves and respects himself for it, will not bend. Women hate men who will bend, despise them.
Very unattractive.
The moment a man demonstrates that he will bend to the whim of his partner, he switches from being sexy man to being husband material. No woman can become aroused by anyone she can't respect. So a man who respects himself can be respected by women. So I say, okay, first one is he's got to love and respect himself. Second one is he's got to be comfortable enough and confident enough with himself to make decisions and lead himself and whoever else is around on adventures that they would all enjoy.
To Oasis.
For instance.
For example, yeah.
Right. Ideally, without having to ask the women where those adventures are, right? What they want. He must be able to make decisions and comfortably and confidently and playfully do them without taking life too seriously.
It's good to have it. That's the smile on the corner of the lips and the corner of the eyes.
That's right.
Something that is...
an irresistible sexual attraction.
It's a beautiful thing.
Love and respect himself. Be confident and able and willing to make decisions and lead himself and others on adventures they would enjoy. Third one is he must adore and cherish women as women. He mustn't be carrying any hostility, any acrimony, any angst, any feeling of being hard done by women. He must love women and recognize that women are not men. And that the things women do and care about, their motivations, are not the same as men's. The way women are socialized is not the same as men. And therefore, not have contempt for them. You must adore them and encourage them to be the people they are. And then finally, he must be interested in the particular woman, not just attracted to her, not just into her, but interested in her as an individual. Now, any woman who's in love with a man will think about that man. He's got all four of us. He loves and respects himself. He's able and willing to make decisions and lead me on adventures I would enjoy. He loves and appreciates women for who women are and how women are. And he's interested in me as an individual. Therefore, every woman knows the man she's in love with is the sort of man who could have any woman he wanted.
Is there an order? Like, is there one that's more important than the rest?
Well, let's step through that. What percentage of men in the world do you imagine present as a confident masculine presence that loves and respects themselves?
Maybe getting back to 1 in 20.
About 5%.
Yeah.
Okay? Maybe it's 10, depends on where you are.
Yeah.
But for the most part, most men don't love and respect themselves. Most men, if confronted about this, and I ask this of my students all the time, I say, guys, okay, first thing is, if you met you, knowing everything you know about yourself, every time you've let yourself down, every time you've been embarrassed or humiliated, every mistake you ever made, if you met you knowing all those things about you and how you are, would you want you as a friend?
100%.
Of course. If the answer is not, fuck yeah, oh my God, that would be the best thing in the world, then you've got to work on yourself.
Yeah, yeah.
For most men, the answer is, well, you know, I tend to bullshit a lot, right? Or I try and alpha other men when their girls are around, or whatever their problems are. So don't accept it in yourself if you wouldn't accept it in another friend. But cut yourself a little slack. Recognize that your other friends, if you have any, know these things about you and are prepared to overlook it for you. Recognize it as something you need to work on and fix it. And when you've fixed it, I guarantee your friendships with your other friends will enhance like crazy. And if it doesn't, then you need to find better friends.
So is that the starting point? Would be the
first thing is you must love. First thing is you must be a confident, comfortable being you, loving yourself, respecting yourself, knowing who you are, and that you're making decent decisions. Then, which percentage of men do you imagine are, because if you're not that first, the likelihood that you're going to be able to comfortably and confidently make decisions for yourself and lead other people is very low.
Yeah.
Even if you are that, the second one is still very low. So we're talking about, let's say, 1 in 100 men who start out with that. Now, of those 1 in 100 men, the majority have probably made peace with the fact that women are not like men, and they're okay with it. So let's say it's 1 in 100 that are the first, 1 in 100 that are the second, 5 in 100 that are the first. And then let's say 2 out of 3 of the 1 in 100 are the third. And then any of them can be interested in the woman as an individual, right? Being interested in someone is valuable and useful. But if you're not these first ones, this last one will not matter that much.
Because you can be as interested as you want, but if
you're not compelling. The first 3 make a man compelling and sexually arousing. The fourth one makes him ideal. So every woman knows that the first 3 are pretty much a given for any man that could have any woman he wants. And then if he tunes his interest in on a particular woman, he's going to be able to have that woman. Okay? So I've been explaining this forever. From when I was 340 pounds and dating Miss Czech Republic, I was always, at best, kind of okay looking in a teddy bear sort of way. Right? I've never been a good-looking guy. I've never looked better than I do right now. And I would say that hot or not, I probably score a solid 4.5 or 5. Nevertheless, the women that choose me are always sublimely wonderful and gorgeous. That's not entirely true. Many of the women who choose me are sublimely wonderful, but not necessarily gorgeous to the external eye. But if they're not someone that I find attractive, I don't spend a lot of time with them, and I'm really, really spoiled. Okay? I've always been able to find incredibly hot, wonderful women, and so generally people look at me with a sense of awe. They go, what, does he have a unit like this? Is he incredibly rich? Is he fantastically powerful? My only power comes from my ability to be influential and clear in communicating.
Yeah.
All the money I have made from doing what I do, which is help people to understand large challenges in simple ways that make for a very straightforward and effective path, and help them feel good about being on that path because it was sure to be satisfying to them, even if it didn't necessarily work out the way they would have liked until they'd been on that path for a while. Okay? Just knowing you're on the right path is satisfying. Knowing you're doing the things you need to do is satisfying. So it's all about managing one's expectations. You have to manage your expectations of yourself so you never find yourself feeling that acrid, corrosive sense of not being enough. Set your expectations based on what you've been able to prove to yourself was real about you if you put in best efforts. So the only reason ever to feel disappointed in yourself is because you didn't try.
And it keeps coming back to that. Is it, I was going to ask, like, if there's one sort of like the most important idea that you've come across, what stands out if I would ask you that now?
I need a framework.
A framework. So if you're talking ego mastery, for instance.
Sure. Well, the most important thing is to remember is how you feel about yourself, since your entire existence takes place inside your skull. Okay? How you feel about yourself is the only thing that matters at the end of the day. Why am I describe myself as universally self-invested. In the old days, I would have said I'm completely uniformly selfish. But people tend to misunderstand what selfishness is, so rather than trying to explain it to them, I chose a better term. A friend of mine actually gave me the term self-invested, and I've appreciated it greatly ever since. And, Adam, if you're out there, I want you to know I never fail to bring that up.
So what does that look like?
Self-investment, that's where you are putting your energies into things that you are confident are going to make you feel better about you. So if I walk down the street as we were today, walking along, there was a lady with a couple of babies in a carriage. I said, hey, would you like some help opening the doors for the casino? She said, yeah, actually. If she'd said no, I would have said, okay, well, if you change your mind, I'm going to be here for a little while, I've got something better to do, right? To give her the opportunity. Because some people, by their nature, have a hard time taking assistance from other people. It makes them feel smaller. I'm not going to put my ability, of course that diminishes them, makes them feel bad, not worth it. I always ask to find out whether I can be helpful, because I never want anyone to feel belittled by my imposing my power on them. But if they'd like help, I'm happy to help. I feel good about myself either way, because I know I've offered. Therefore, put a message in their brain that they're not alone. Okay? We're all in this together. If I can help, I do. Happy to do it. Happy to have the result. That they said yes, they'd appreciate it means I've gotten all the reward I want, all the reward I need. I was appreciated. I did something good. I feel good about myself. Self-investment. Invest in yourself so you'll feel good about you.
What's the connection there with investment and value and appreciation? Because we're having like a lot of these terms.
Sure. Okay, so let's talk about appreciation.
A very wealthy kind of.
I can't stand the sensation of someone's feeling grateful to me. Because in order to feel grateful, to feel gratitude, they would have to have believed they had received something from me gratis. Gratis means for free. In other words, they've done nothing to earn it. Now, I never do anything for anyone unless I believe they would like for me to, and it will be worth it to me to do it because I'll feel good about me for having done it. I don't give money to winos on the street because I know if I do, I'm going to be confident they're going to misuse it and they're going to be worse off the next day. If there's someone who's having a hard time and I can help and I offer to help and they want me to, I feel terrific regardless of whether or not they're going to be better off afterwards because I believed I was doing the right thing for them. Okay? So the value comes from if I've got time or available resources that I can apply to the betterment of someone else in my mind by my own belief system, and they've chosen for me to do that, they'd like it, I sense their appreciation of what I'm doing. That makes me feel rewarded. All I need is to feel good about myself. Feeling good about myself being the end result, the goal I'm after. I'm successful when I get to feel good about myself. I feel good about myself by the knowledge that I would help, even if I don't end up helping. I feel particularly good if I've offered to help. I feel still more good if I've been empowered to help because they wanted me to and they appreciate it. Whereas if I feel used, that's tremendously negative for me. So I never set myself up to be in a situation where a person who is not clearly appreciative will get things from me. Now recognize, gratitude, its root is gratis, as I say. It's unreasonable for a person to feel grateful to me because I'm giving to them selfishly. I'm giving to them for the reward of knowing that I'm empowering them to live better. It makes me feel good about me. So if they take value from it, fantastic. Now, if they take value from what I'm sharing, and the opportunity comes up for them to do something that would be helpful for me, even as small as hand on a URL from one of my websites to someone else, I win because they're showing their appreciation by sharing the insights with somebody else, or taking my message and bringing it to still other people. I'm just as happy with that. I don't care if people can chase it back to me. I don't care. What I care about is the world is a happier place once people realize the point to doing nice things is not to avoid punishment by some god. It's not to get some reward. The purpose to doing good things, to being an honorable and noble person, is not because you fear some alien fist coming down and crushing you from some deity that's warned you of how you must do things. It's not because you want the reward that's been promised you in the afterlife. It's because doing noble, honorable, and good things right now for people that you believe would like it makes you feel good about yourself.
Feels good.
Right now.
Feels
And
good.
when you feel good about yourself, everyone can sense your happiness and successfulness. And that is the most compelling and arousing thing a person can have. Guys like you, guys like me, we constantly have people around us. People come out of the woodwork, not because we toady to them and tell them how great they are, but because we give them exactly the appreciation they deserve. If they're good, noble, honorable people, we treat them as friends.
Yeah.
Best compliment I've got for someone. People talk to me about, oh yeah, well, just friends. Just. I sleep with all my female friends anyway. Right? I'm not all, but almost all.
Yeah.
Because what greater compliment is there? Right? I'd be my friend in a hot second. If I find someone who's worthwhile having as a friend, that means they've made the grade.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because it sure is easy for me to find people who appreciate me. Finding people who are appreciable and quality, that's a challenge. But I'm always open to it. I'm always on the lookout. And I don't care how they present themselves otherwise. It staggers me the way people are so unbelievably prejudiced as an affectation, what we call virtue signaling. They're trying to show the world how good they are. I will make jokes, okay, with people no matter who they are, all the time, because it's in my nature and because I want them to understand how little I take things seriously.
Yeah.
Okay? The stuff that matters, I take it absolutely seriously.
Yeah.
Most stuff is so much a case of water off a duck's back.
The stuff that matters, give us an example of things that matter.
Being the person you are and allowing other people to know who that person is, being consistent and therefore predictable, so that other people know what you're likely to do, what you're likely to believe about a certain thing. I am so predictable. Everyone who knows me well thinks I am completely stable, and I'm the guy they go to for advice.
Yeah.
People who don't understand me well think I'm chaotic and random. They can't wrap their head around anything I do. They think I'm crazy. I'm crazy if you don't understand where I'm coming from. I'm completely stable and sane if you do.
If you take the time to.
Because I'm so completely consistent. My
it's like
philosophy,
transparent and
exactly.
And, yeah.
Okay? But people don't understand. The idea of transparency is scary to them. They think, oh no, if people knew what I was really like, they would never spend time with me. And this brings me to an important and critical aspect. Guys, we have a problem in relationships. No one ever thinks, I would never work for a company stupid enough to trust me. Okay? I'd never work for a boss dumb enough to hire me. I would never have a friend with such low standards as to trust me. But somehow we accept what I like to call Marx's paradox, named for the brilliant American philosopher Groucho Marx, another stand-up philosopher, who said, I'd never belong to a club that would have a guy like me as a member. Okay? And where do we do this? Because that's crazy. We do this with women. If we meet a woman and we do not have to put ourselves under presentation mode and showman mode, demonstrate to them how terrific we are, and how cool we are, and how smart we are, and how kind we are, and how generous and powerful. If we actually just spend time with them as friends, if we let them get to know us as we are without bullshitting them at all, and they like us enough to go to bed with us, oh, they're too easy. Right? If I didn't have to lie to her, put on a better outfit, clean my house, and she went to bed with me, oh, she's too easy. Because after all, I should never hook up with anyone whose standards are so low as to hook up with me. Okay? Do you recognize how nuts that is? And women, of course, understand that this is the way men have been programmed. So they play games. They play games with us because we force them to. A girl has to play hard to get, because if she's actually just the person she is and appreciates us for the people we are, we have been taught there's no way in the world she could actually have good judgment for liking us as we are. Liking us as we are is crazy. We're not any good. Now that's absolutely pathological. Okay?
It's insanity.
Right. Like I said, when I would do stand-up, I'd point this out. Everyone would giggle and laugh because they'd recognize it. It wouldn't change anything for them. They'd still all go off and do it. But of course it's laughable because it's so crazy. Okay? Women can intuit, can sense what a man believes about himself from across the room. When I walk over to a girl, I always use the special patented Johnny pickup line. It's worked forever. It's the best line ever. And I don't recommend you use it because it almost certainly wouldn't work for you. It would come off as disingenuous. Unless your name is Johnny, in which case go ahead. Otherwise, you'll probably want to tune it up for your own self. It works like this. I walk over and I say, hey, I'm Johnny. What's your name? It's magic. Magic.
Just melts.
Okay? Now, because when I walk over, there's no part of me that's saying, oh shit, what if she doesn't like me? What if she doesn't think I'm good enough? What if she wants someone better than me? I walk over to women already knowing that I'm the real deal. I walk over to women knowing I can deliver the goods. Everything about me is as plain as could be. They can sense from across the room, I own my shit. I know who I am. I love and respect myself. Obviously, I appreciate and value women. I'm prepared to make decisions for myself and go ahead and do them. And I'm now, obviously, interested in her. So I walk over to a girl to find out whether I can stand her.
And you've proven this to yourself over and over.
Oh, I have been an icon in the men's seduction community for a very long time. I have a ludicrously prestigious track record of empowering women to go ahead and do what they wanted to do already, which, by the way, is what seduction is all about. Inspiring a person to feel comfortable and confident in going ahead and doing what they already wanted to do. And I have done this for a fantastic number of women, and I'm on great terms with basically every single one of them because I was never misrepresentative, never ever lied to any of them about any of this. I never suggested they would be my one and only. I was always totally clear because I'm not going to lie to a woman. That's crazy. After I get off in her mouth, I'm going to pass out. And you think I want to be in a situation where I'm powerless with someone pissed off at me? That's crazy.
No.
Never lie to women, guys. That's suicide. Just remember Lorena Bobbitt. Anyway, on a serious note, I tell people the straight dope. Not everyone's prepared to believe it. It goes against what they've been raised to believe was possible. However, I say, check out my work. It's free. Just being the person you are, totally and sublimely comfortable with it, will make you more impressive than anything you could possibly do to try and be impressive. Fellas, it's a simple rule. You can't simultaneously be something and be becoming that thing. Okay? Trying to be something ensures you're not actually being that thing. Think about the last time you tried to be funny. Okay? Trying to be impressive makes sure you're not impressive. Women can sense how you feel about yourself from across the room. They've evolved to be able to do it. It's been necessary even since long before there was language. Long before there was any other form of status than a person's being comfortable enough and confident enough to walk across the field to let the girl know, hey, I'm interested. So, to close out some more of this stuff, really to bring a closure to the idea of ego mastery, the first part of it is recognizing that your ego exists alongside your subconscious mind. It exists in your subconscious. Your subconscious can communicate with you in language you can understand. Your emotional core cannot. Your emotional core sends you feels, not thoughts. And you can't send feels back to your emotional core. And your emotional core doesn't understand thoughts or words. So you're kind of screwed. You can't tell your body, don't be afraid of the dark. There's nothing to be afraid of here. Go on, it's fine. That's not going to remove your fear of the dark. Here's what will. You can tell your subconscious, take this message in the language my emotional core understands, to my emotional core. Take the message, hey, I've got this. It's cool, we're fine. Better than fine. If you take that message to your subconscious, have it carry the message forward to your emotional core, your subconscious sends that message, and your emotional core suddenly stands down. Oh, cool. Whew. Thank goodness. And it instantly relaxes. Now, you may need to do this a bunch of times, but just like with a computer, you can program a macro, okay? Just a single thing that you do to send that entire message directly to your subconscious with the instruction, bring it to your emotional core. Okay, just snap your finger or tap your forehead or pull your finger.
Just have a trigger.
Just have a trigger. And instantaneously, the message, hey, everything I read.
Everything I read.
Everything's going to be just fine. We've got this. Will be transmitted to your emotional core will stand down. And then everything is easy. Now the really funky thing is, as you prove this to yourself, you'll discover something really cool. Your ego has always known this. Your ego understands that it's at the level of your subconscious and it can speak directly to your emotional core. Your emotional core takes inputs from the outside world at exactly the same time as your cerebral core does. Okay? You see something scary, and your brain gets a message, oh, this is scary. Your mind goes, okay, that's something scary, but I'm not in jeopardy. There's a big glass plane in front of me between me and that. We're okay. Right? And so your emotional core might still be frightened, but you grab a hold of yourself and you manage, you accept that you're getting the feeling of being frightened, but your mind holds your frame. Now, when your ego steps in, your ego can send a message to your emotional core by its own back channel. It speaks to your emotional core and tells you, be terrified, there's something scary here. And since your mind is not seeing something scary and doesn't know what to do about it, it's not saying, oh, I've still got this. Instead, you're just getting the heebie-jeebies. Okay? So your ego uses this back channel trick to keep you from doing things when you want to do them. It sends this message instead of saying to you, oh, don't do that, it's going to fail. If it determines that you're not listening to it, it will try this back channel trick and give you literal physical pain, okay, to stop you from going ahead, because it's only concerned with stopping you from potentially embarrassing it by trying something that will not resolve in a success. So as you teach it that not letting you do something is always a failure, and accepting that you need to feel, you need to actually work on feeling humiliated and embarrassed by having stopped because your ego tried to stop you. That submission, that enslavement is something only you can control. And remember, nothing can make you feel inferior without your consent. No one, no thing can make you feel badly about yourself without your agreeing to. So you never need to empower your ego to fuck with you. And you can say, thank you.
Thank you.
Get on with it. Eventually your ego will stop trying when you've proven to it that, hey, you don't make constant classic fuck-ups that make it smaller, but instead you have profound successes that make it bigger. I can promise you all, I never hesitate to walk up to a pretty girl I find interesting, no matter how I'm looking, no matter if I know I'm not at my best, doesn't matter. The only thing that goes through my head is my ego saying, go on, she's going to love you. What are you waiting for? I usually say, you know what, my dance card is pretty full. Thank you. Yeah? It's okay. Because, to be honest, my dance card's always full. So, with that in mind, if you go to Johnny Soporno on Google, you'll find lots of stuff. I have hundreds of websites. They all tend to lead back to successfulness.com. I'm very happy to hear from anyone. You can find me on Facebook. I've got many, many, many Facebook accounts because they keep cutting me off at 5,000 friends, so I keep having to section them off. I can be reached. I'm happy to answer emails. I'm happy to provide support for people for nothing as far as they're concerned. They don't have to do anything except reach out to me. But because you've taken the step to reach out for me, I feel honored and appreciated. So it's easy for me to give something back because giving something back makes me feel good about me.
Crazy idea.
And so part of the reason I have so much success with people and feel so good about me all the time, and the reason people are so happy and open to having me start up conversations with them wherever I am, is because I radiate successfulness. I broadcast my fundamental self-satisfaction and happiness. Makes me look like I'm 12 feet tall. Okay? I walk around the world everywhere I am, even places where I don't speak the language. I'm not intimidated. There's no part of me that's broadcasting out, uh-oh, I'm in trouble, I need help. Hey, as long as I'm there, everything's great. Okay? So this becomes this fundamental paradigm, at which point I hope that you and everyone that you share this with will eventually start to be, as I say, manumissionaries, helping liberate people from the belief that they must do things the way they were supposed to in order to receive the reward that they get to be happy. Because everyone gets to be happy all the time just by making the choice. Be happy. It's all you need to do. And so I'm going to leave this off, if it's okay with you,
It is.
with what I consider to be, all right, you want to give happy notes? It's easier for me. I can just tell these guys. It's wonderful. Guys, take a few minutes and visit happinessball.com, or I think happyballs.com. No, happyballs.com belongs to the guys who make the little yellow smiling faces you put on your car, Ariel. Happyball.com, and you'll find a wonderful metaphorical presentation that will help you a lot in reminding yourself how easy it is to anchor down and be happy under any circumstance. So you'll find it. It's also on my YouTube page as Johnny Soporno. I'm not going to bother consuming a lot of cycles going through that again. Just going to give you an RTFM URL. Right? Read the fucking manual. Here's the universal resource list. RTFM URL. Go and find it for yourself. What I will say is the very best thing about the game of life, the game in which you are constantly winning as long as you feel self-satisfied and happy at once. All the time. And I'm winning it all the time. And anything you do today is wonderful practice for tomorrow and for the future. So if you're thinking to yourself, as my friend Jamie says, if you're thinking about, I'll be happy when, so it's okay that I'm not happy now, that's practice for tomorrow. And tomorrow you'll also be unhappy as you're waiting for whatever to happen. So for me, being happy all the time has built these wonderful smile lines and wrinkles and this overwhelming, jovial, teddy bearish style that comes across. I have that Uncle Bad Touch persona that so many young girls crave. But here's the kicker. The best thing about the game of life, the thing that nobody seems to get, is that in order for you to win. In fact, in order for all of us to win, in fact, in order for everybody to win at the same time, nobody else has to lose. It is not a zero-sum game. In order for me to win, nobody else has to feel badly about themselves. No one else is prevented from feeling good about themselves because I feel good about myself. Not now, not ever. There are no limited resources, even beautiful women. If another person has a relationship with a beautiful woman and it's necessary for their relationship for them to be exclusive, that's no problem for me and no business of mine. I don't need that. I need my partners to feel as enriched and full in the world as they can. So I'm utterly communicative. I don't let anyone misappraise me. I don't want anyone to feel grateful to me for anything I've done. I just want them to appreciate my reasoning, because if they do, they'll want good things for me. So, as I say, I give this message to you, and I'm so happy to have this opportunity.
And so am I.
Because all I want for the world is for people to understand and appreciate themselves, their circumstances, how they can be happy and self-satisfied in their lives on a full-time basis and go forward from a position of happy power without any inhibitions. And if they happen to remember that I was someone involved in that, they'll think good things about me, and that can't be bad. So, I guess on that note, thank you for your attention. Please come looking for me, and I look forward to meeting any and all of you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
It's been absolutely a blast.
It's been an honor, been fun. Until next time, rock on.